So welcome everybody to another Macklin's Take YouTube episode. I'm Andy Clarke, he's Matt Macklin. That never changes. And today's episode is inspired by the following quote. You'll probably recognize this one. It's a recent one. And to be honest, there aren't that many people who are capable of saying this type of thing. So here we go. I could drink 14 pints and still give AJ a hiding. I'm not training anymore. I only need 6 or 7 weeks for these bums. I don't need no big, great sparring partners for a bodybuilding type of guy. I just need the local binmen. Mr. T Fury of Manchester. Mr. T Fury of Manchester. Now, the reason I picked that out is not just because it's very entertaining and the kind of thing we hear from him, but because, Matt, I'm happy to kind of nail my colours to the post now and say that that fight is going to happen at the end of June, at the start of July. Nothing revolutionary about me saying that. It's not going to make me Nostradamus if that turns out to be the case. But the reason I'm happy to say that is because we are now 3 months out from there, three and a half months out from there. This is exactly the point at which we would normally have a massive press conference to announce a fight. I think if conditions were normal, if you like, that is what would be happening. But at the moment, things like venues, things like dates, everything's in flux, things can change. I think were we not under these conditions, we'd have had that announcement, we'd have the press conference, we'd be maybe looking forward to a press tour. So I'm taking that quote from Fury, which is a couple of days old, as the starting pistol. It's the first shot fired. He sent a big flare up into the sky there. And what I want to talk about is, what can we expect over the next 3 months, basically, in terms of a build-up? Because we're not going to have the normal type of build-up that we would have. Things will drip out bit by bit. We'll get the date soon enough. We'll get the venue soon enough. But these two aren't going to be coming face-to-face. It's not going to be like things normally are. And this is by far the biggest fight that we've had under these conditions. One of the biggest fights we'll have had under any kinds of conditions. I'm just wondering, is this maybe a good thing for Joshua that he's not going to have too much face time with Fury? Not because he'll be intimidated or anything like that, but just because whoever you are, if you're fighting Fury, if you can avoid having to share face time with him, it's not a bad thing.
No, listen, I mean, exactly. You hit the nail on the head, really. But, and I also agree, I think, because of the way things are, I think bits of information, it's going to be a series of announcements as opposed to one big announcement. There'll be the, it's agreed, it's on, then it'll be the date, then it'll be the venue, then it'll be the network or networks. I think it's going to be bit by bit, and there'll be announcements, and it'll probably be over social media as opposed to a press conference. I think, the fact that if AJ doesn't have to spend too much face-to-face time, too many press conferences with Tyson Fury, that's probably a good thing. We look at Carl Froch against George Groves. In the second fight, he just didn't want to even get into it with him, did he? Because he knew that in the first fight, he'd let himself get sucked in far too much. And it doesn't matter who you are or who you speak to, what team you have. You're human. You've got to sit back after and you have your thoughts, and you start thinking about things. And you start analysing things. You can start overthinking, and doubts can creep in. So, if you're fighting someone like Tyson Fury, the least time that you get to spend with him, the better.
Yeah, that was my point, really, and it is unusual. The circumstances are unusual for this because, as I said, usually there would be the press tour. Usually they would have these official engagements. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I can't see any way that that's going to happen. But in terms of, we know that they've both been in the gym, and we think they've been in the gym ticking over for a while, actually, because we've been homing in on this kind of 2-week period, let's call it, for a spell. We know that Joshua in particular, he does like a long camp. He does like a long camp. He likes to take things nice and gradually. How different is it going to make it? Number one, that as of yet, actually, they don't have that date, although I'm sure they're both super confident this is going to happen. And also the fact that they will be left much more to themselves. Is it good, or could it will it feel a bit weird, kind of just being stuck in your shell, knowing this massive event is coming, but it's not going to really feel like it until the week of the fight?
Well, I don't know. I mean, in terms of where they are now, obviously, we only hear things as they're kind of ready to be announced. We're probably hearing it before the general population. We're still very much in the dark. And I guess the people that are actually making the decisions in things, I don't think they even know for 100% yet. There's things, there's a few ifs and buts and maybe. I think it's agreed that the fight's going to happen. But in terms of putting it together and making the actual decisions on that, I think they're up for discussion still. So, in terms of motivating yourself to train, obviously when you have a date, it's a lot easier to lock in. You've got a date to focus on. But, you know, a week or two here or there, they know this fight's happening. It's a massive fight. You know, they don't have to make weight because they're heavyweights, but they'll have an optimum fighting weight that they perform best at. So they'll want to be getting into a good sort of base fitness stage, I'd say now. I think I heard that Andy Lee was over doing a bit with Tyson Fury. So, you know, he's already trying to, almost like a pre-camp, you know, he's getting himself into general fitness. He's trying to build up a bit of stamina, maybe shed a bit of weight, maybe talk about tactics and things like that. But they know that that's going to hone in and they're going to knuckle down and get a bit more, put more meat on the bone and that sort of thing as they get closer. You know, I don't think there'll be any talk of sparring or anything like that right now. But I think certainly a bit of general road work, a bit of bag work, just general conditioning. I think that will definitely be taking place. And then, of course, once things get finalised, that's when I imagine they will all start to crank it up a few notches.
What's your sense from exchanges they've had in the past? I mean, I've never, off the top of my head, I can't think of a time where I've really seen these two together. Most things are done over social media now, and as we know, sometimes that's for show and sometimes that isn't. For example, in New York happened when Ruiz beat Joshua. If I remember rightly, Fury responded pretty much instantly with a pretty classy tweet saying, "This is boxing, this happens, chin up," kind of thing. And then a few days later, he just couldn't help himself, and it was all back to big dosses and bombs and all the rest of it. You know, it's a standard kind of affair. But I mean, you know, what's your kind of? You're guessing as well. I know that. I'm not asking you to gaze into a crystal ball. But as a fighter, what's your kind of sense of where these two are with each other in terms of? I mean, they're very different. They're very different. But I mean, I do think there's some respect there.
But first of all, I think they're both decent fellas. Really, truth be told, behind it all, I think they're both decent fellas. And you know, even Fury, I think Fury, I know he says some crazy things, but I think Fury's a decent fella. Do you know what I mean? Joshua's definitely a decent fella too. But, and as much as, you know, it's mental warfare, isn't it? You're going to fight someone, so it's warfare, and you're trying to get an upper hand, trying to get the edge any way you can. But without a doubt, Anthony Joshua will have a lot of respect for Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury will have a lot of respect for Anthony Joshua. Of course they have. They're at the top of their game. They're at the top level, and they know, you know, they know Ruiz. You know, whatever he wants to say, he knows Ruiz is a good fighter, and he also knows that, yeah, maybe he got caught on the hop a bit, looking past him in New York, but he went over to Saudi, immediate rematch, which most people said wasn't a good idea, and he went in there. Whatever way you want to look at it, he got the job done, right? So definitely Tyson Fury, I think, fair play to you. And he's not going to say that to him in the build-up, is he? He's going to try and trash him and take away his confidence in any which way he can. Of course he is, but deep down he will. And likewise, you know, Anthony Joshua, no, Tyson Fury coming off a 2.5-year layoff, 2 glorified spars, going and fighting Deontay Wilder, getting off the deck, should have got the decision. He'll have huge respect for him, massive respect for him. When you're fighting, you never, ever want to give that. You don't even want to admit to yourself that you've got that bit of respect for them. You might say in an interview if you feel like it's the right thing to say, but really, you'll be grudging it. You don't want to give any respect or any credit to them. You're trying to trash them. You don't even want to give it them. But, you know, when you can come out of that, you realise, nah, the respect was always there.
Do you think it's fair to say, and this is the last one I'll ask you before we wind this one up, do you think it's fair to say, though, that Fury, certainly in the heavyweight division, maybe in world boxing, that there's a kind of aura, a kind of shroud around him, if you like, that there just isn't around maybe anybody else? Because he's just an extraordinary character. It's the background as well, the traveller background, because he's been boxing for such a long time. The way that he can box for someone so big, the name, there's just all sorts of things that go into it, and he hasn't lost yet. And a lot of people feel that he should still have a 100% record after that draw against Wilder. I'm taking a long time to say it, but basically what I'm driving at is, does he just have this kind of something about him that gives him a little bit of a mental edge, and would do probably against anybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's his personality, isn't it? It's how quick-witted he is. You wouldn't want to get into a slagging match with him, would you? You can't. I don't think you could beat him. You're never going to. You'd have to be Conor McGregor or someone like that could probably stand there and go back and forth. Even then, he's just so quick with his tongue. Tyson Fury, you wouldn't want to be his opponent going into the mental battle, the psychological warfare. But you're right as well. It's not just the slagging and the banter and the crack that he's really good at. It's what he's done. He had the 2.5-year layoff. He ballooned up in all that weight. He lost it all, came back, went in for Deontay Wilder, got up off the floor twice. After the 2.5-year layout, 2 glorified spars come back. That was phenomenal what he did. And I thought he won the fight. I think most people thought he won the fight. I thought draw, he was unlucky to get a draw there. I thought Fury won the fight. But then to go and do what he did in the rematch, which was to take it to the most fearsome, and let's have it right. Going into that fight, people were saying that Deontay Wilder might be the hardest one-punch puncher in boxing history. He starched Luis Ortiz, never won a round in that fight. One punch, bang, it's over. Dominic Breazeale knocked him clean out first round. It was devastating knockouts, these were. He had a fearsome reputation. Fury, I thought Fury would outbox him, but I didn't think he'd take it to him, take the centre of the ring, back him up, manhandle him, ragdoll him, bully him. I didn't see that. And I don't think anyone did, even though he did say he was going to do that. He did say it.
It's exactly that kind of thing. It's exactly that kind of thing. There's nothing more impressive than when someone says they're going to do something and everybody laughs at them, and then they actually do it. That just kind of like gives you this sort of mystical aspect almost, that you know things that other people don't know. And I think that's probably the best way to describe it with him. I think he's just got that aura of a man who knows something you don't know, and that's quite disconcerting, I think.
Yeah, well, it gives him an aura. It gives him a bit of mystique. Fighters have that for a period of time. Is it real, or is it is it sort of what the opponents or the public and the media kind of create? Conor McGregor had it, didn't he, after the Jose Aldo fight? He said, I'm going to knock him out in the first few seconds. And he did. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, wow. Nassim Hamid was picking rounds and doing it. And then all of a sudden, you get this hype. You think, wow, you start believing into the aura and the hype of it all. But, definitely right now, everything he's saying, he's backing it up. So until proven otherwise, he does kind of carry that bit of a extra X factor or aura.
He does. But the flip side to that is there is always somebody out there, almost always anyway. There's been the odd fighter, of course, who's retired undefeated, but there's usually someone out there who punches that balloon at some point, and that air of mystery evaporates. 1 minute it's there, the next minute it's just scattered to the winds. And maybe Joshua could be the person to do that. He's not going to be intimidated by Fury, face to face or in the ring. No question of that. That's not going to happen. But I think he probably will be quite glad of the fact that he's not going to have to be up close and personal and share the same space with him as much as he normally would have to in the build up to a fight. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for him. So, like I said at the beginning, I know we don't have a date yet. I know we don't have a venue yet, but I think these things will kind of just drip out. Like Matt said, it's not really where we are at the minute. We're not really in the land of big announcements, massive press conferences. I wish we were, but we're just not at the minute. You look at Jose Ramirez against Josh Taylor, May the 22nd. We kind of knew it was going to be May the 22nd a couple of months ago, but it didn't actually get confirmed until recently. So we'll wind it up for today. Thanks for the support for the YouTube channel. Keep it coming, and let's see if we can get those subscribers up. The audio podcast This week is with dazzling Darren Barker, a good pal of ours. That was great fun. So do check that out if you get the opportunity, and we'll see you again soon.